Title: When Colors Fell Silent. Warning note: this story contains emotional themes, medical situations, and psychological elements involving anxiety and trauma. No graphic violence or explicit content is included. Author: Soulbridge. Disclaimer: all events and characters in this novel are fictional. Any similarity to real persons or events is coincidental. This story was born from the idea that emotions have color, that love can heal what reason cannot. I hope you find a part of yourself in every chapter. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Sees What Others Don't. Inside the small apartment, evening settles gently. The fan hums. Steam curls from the kitchen. Crayons are scattered all over the floor. Lin Zeyuan, 6, is kneeling on his bed instead of sitting properly, tongue slightly out in concentration. He is drawing. Not houses, not stick figures. Swirls. Blue, yellow, gray. The door clicks. He freezes. Father enters, shoulders slumped, tie loose. And there it is, blue, soft and droopy, like a blanket falling off someone's shoulders. Zeyuan gasps softly. He grabs the blue crayon immediately. "Papa, wait." Father blinks. "What happened?" Zeyuan points very seriously at his chest. "It's leaking again." "What is?" "The blue." Father laughs, bewildered. "There's no blue." "Yes, there is," Zeyuan insists, climbing off the bed and squinting at him like a tiny inspector. "It's big today, very big." Father crouches down, still confused. "Oh, how big?" Zeyuan spreads his arms dramatically. "This is big." Then Father smiles. Amber slips into the blue. Zeyuan's eyes widen. It changed. He grabs the yellow crayon now. "See? You're happy I waited." Father stares at him, unsettled but curious. "How do you know that?" Zeyuan whispers like it's a secret. "The colors tell me." From the kitchen. "Mother OS. If the colors tell him to sleep, I'll believe it." Zeyuan giggles. Father glances toward the kitchen, lowering his voice. "Is he learning colors this way?" Mother calls back, half amused, half uncertain. "I don't know, but it looks like he is." Father watches his son, confusion flickering across his face, then softening into pride. He really sees them and remembers. But as Father turns away, the amber fades. Faint gray threads cling to him. Zeyuan frowns. He runs after him and wraps his small arms around Father's leg. Suddenly, Father stumbles slightly. "Hey, what's this?" Zeyuan presses his cheek against him and squeezes tightly. "Go away," he whispers. "Shoo." Father blinks. "Shoo what?" "The gray." There is a pause, a very small pause. Father forces a smile. There's nothing there. But Zeyuan knows because the gray doesn't disappear. Not this time. And for the first time, he realizes he might be the only one who sees it. Afternoon. The sun presses hard against the school windows, turning the corridors bright and suffocating. The bell rings. Lin Zeyuan, 16, moves through the hallway like someone trying not to drown. Laughter bursts around him in orange sparks. Gossip snakes past in thin violet threads. Jealousy leaks in sharp green fumes. It is everywhere, always everywhere. His jaw tightens. He used to like colors. Now they crowd him, overlap, crash into each other like paint hurled against glass. A group of boys pushes past. Then a thud, books scatter across the floor. A thin boy kneels, hands shaking as others laugh. Crimson erupts. Not soft red, not flickering, but humiliation thick and burning, pouring from the boy's chest in waves. Fear mixes into it, metallic and sharp. The color slams into Zeyuan like heat against skin. He stops breathing. "Stop, please stop," he whispers, but not to the boys. He is speaking to the colors. They don't listen. They expand. The laughter glows violent orange. Cruelty stains dark purple. The crimson thickens until faces disappear. He sees nothing but emotion. His vision swims. Lockers dig into his back as he stumbles. A hand grabs his shoulder. "Hey, Lin. You okay? You look pale." He forces his expression into something neutral. Neutral is safe. He says he is just dizzy. But the bullied boy's crimson shifts, collapsing inward, dark and heavy. Something inside Zeyuan twists. Why does he feel it too? Why does it sit in his chest as if it belongs to him? The hallway feels too small, too loud, too alive. He turns, walks fast, then faster, then runs. He doesn't stop until he reaches the empty stairwell. Silence. The colors thin here. He grips the railing, breathing hard, staring at his hands. They look normal, but he feels stained. At 6, he tried to blow the gray away. At 16, he knows better. The colors don't disappear. They attach, and for the first time, he wishes he couldn't see them at all. The sun hangs low, bleeding gold across the cracked tiles of the school rooftop. Wind moves across the open space, cool against overheated skin. Zeyuan bursts through the metal door, shuts it behind him, and leans back as if something might follow. Silence. No lockers slamming, no laughter tearing through the air, no crimson bursting like open wounds. The colors thin gradually. The sharp orange fades first, then the choking violet, then the heavy green. Only faint silver and pale blue linger close to him, clinging, his own. He slides down the door until he is sitting on the ground. Fingers curl into the fabric of his shirt, gripping near his collarbone. His breathing is uneven. It's too loud, too many colors, he mutters under his breath. The wind brushes past again. Above, the sky stretches wide and distant. No edges, no faces, no emotion spilling from anyone. He shuts his eyes. Behind his eyelids, the hallway still flickers. Crimson humiliation, orange laughter, but dimmer now, thinner. When he opens them, the rooftop remains still. Gold light, moving shadows. Nothing is reaching toward him. He stays there, the metal door cool against his back, the sky too large above him. Downstairs, the next bell rings. The villa's living room breathed in shadows. Moonlight spilled through tall arched windows, pooling across the marble floor like spilled silver. The chandelier above, crystal and antique, hung motionless, its facets catching fragments of light that trembled across velvet drapes. Somewhere deeper in the house, a clock ticked with deliberate grace. At the dining table, his parents spoke in lowered voices. Zeyuan sat nearby with an open textbook, pen resting between his fingers, though he wasn't reading. His mother glanced at him. "He's been quiet lately. Maybe he's just too sensitive," she said, her words trailing with a faint gray thread. Father did not look up from his glass. "He's growing up. Teenagers feel too much. He'll toughen up." The gray deepened slightly, not sharp, just tired. Zeyuan lowered his gaze to the page. The air around the table shimmered faintly, muted blues, restrained green, something heavier beneath it all. He blinked, but the colors did not disappear. He pressed the pen harder into the paper until the ink bled through. When their conversation shifted to something else, he nodded faintly, as if he had been listening all along. Later that night, voices rose from downstairs. Not loud, not explosive, but enough. Zeyuan slipped out of bed, crossed the hallway barefoot, and stepped onto the balcony. The night air was cool. The sky stretched dark and endless. No colors reached him here, only wind. He sat on the cold stone floor, back against the railing. The sounds from inside dulled behind glass and distance. He focused on the rhythm of his breathing. In, out, in, out. The tightness in his chest loosened. The faint hues around him thinned, almost invisible. Above him, the stars did not change. They did not feel. They did not bleed into one another. He stayed there until the house quieted. A pale blue shimmer lingered briefly near his shoulder, then drifted away with the wind. The villa grew busier, yet quieter. Morning light filtered through tall windows, settling over polished marble that no longer echoed with his footsteps toward the door. Zeyuan had stopped going to school. At first, it was small things, headaches, fatigue, a vague tightness in his chest. Then came silence. He stayed in his room longer, curtains half-drawn, lights dim, windows closed. Downstairs, Lin Zeyuan stood near the dining table, fingers resting against the back of a chair. Her voice carried the weight of worry. He barely leaves his room now. Across from her, Lin Zeyuan adjusted his cufflinks slowly, gaze distant. It's a phase. Pressure maybe. School can be overwhelming. His tone was steady, but a muted gray hovered around him, controlled concern that he tried to disguise. 3 days later, the decision was made. A private tutor arrived first, carrying structured lesson plans and a careful smile that never faltered. Her perfume lingered faintly in the study room, long after she sat down. Zeyuan took his seat across from her, at the long table beneath the chandelier, crystal facets scattering sunlight into fractured reflections. Her voice was warm, encouraging, wrapped in soft blue patience, underlined by a restrained yellow hum of expectation. He kept his eyes lowered, answered clearly, never too fast, never too slow, balanced, measured, neutral. After she left, another visitor came, a doctor, soft-spoken and observant, with wire-rimmed glasses resting low against his nose. They sat in the living room, Zeyuan on one sofa, Lin Meilan beside him, Lin Zeyuan standing near the window. "Have you been feeling overwhelmed?" the doctor asked. Zeyuan nodded once. "What happens when you're outside?" The clock on the far wall ticked with deliberate calm. Tick, tick, tick. His fingers curled slightly against his knees. The air felt thinner. "Do you ever see or hear things others don't?" Lin Meilan's breath caught almost imperceptibly. Lin Zeyuan's posture stiffened. The words rose inside him, red bursting in hallways, green choking the air, crimson humiliation burning against skin, colors screaming without sound. He could say it, he could tell them, but when he looked at the doctor, there was no color around him, only neutral curiosity, measured, clinical. "No," Zeyuan said quietly. A brief pause. The doctor nodded slowly. "Adolescence can heighten emotional sensitivity, especially in introverted personalities. Some withdrawal is not unusual." Lin Meilan exhaled softly, her concern etched into every glance at her son. Lin Zeyuan thanked the doctor with quiet composure. Recommendations followed: routine, structured study, limited stimulation, rest. Zeyuan remained still throughout, his sadness folded inward, his silence unbroken. That night, the villa settled into quiet. Voices faded, footsteps ceased. In his room, moonlight traced pale lines across the floor. He stood before the mirror, his reflection unchanged. Same eyes, same face, steady. He focused. For a moment, faint silver shimmered near his shoulder. Loneliness. He did not react, did not reach for it, did not name it. The shimmer steadied, then dimmed. He turned off the light. From that day onward, he never mentioned the colors again. Not to Lin Meilan, not to Lin Zeyuan, not to tutors, not to doctors. If no one else could see them, then neither would he. At least not where anyone could notice. Morning light spilled through the high windows, pale and almost surgical, cutting clean rectangles across the tiled floor. The psychology classroom felt too orderly, desks aligned with quiet obedience, chairs tucked in precisely. On the far wall, a faded poster of Carl Jung watched from behind half-closed blinds, his shadow splitting his face in two. A faint smell of whiteboard ink and oversteeped oolong tea lingered. At the front desk, a stack of case study folders waited like sealed envelopes no one was brave enough to open. The projector flickered on. Psychiatry, understanding the unseen. Students drifted in, whispers, bags dropping, a stifled yawn. At the back of the room, Lin Zeyuan, 22, sat still, posture straight, hands folded loosely over his notebook. He looked calm. He looked ordinary. But the room was never just a room to him. Soft yellow glowed around a girl in the front row, eager and leaning forward already. Dull gray sagged over two boys near the window, barely present. A restless red flickered around someone tapping their pen too fast. The colors layered quietly, contained. He inhaled once, slowly. The red dimmed. The gray blurred into the background. He focused on the board instead. Professor Zhang entered mid-conversation with himself, sleeves rolled, glasses low on his nose. Without greeting, he wrote a single word across the board. Perception. "The mind rarely says what it means," he began. "It suggests, it hides, it performs." His gaze swept the room. A good psychiatrist must see beyond what's spoken. Something almost like irony brushed across Zeyuan's expression. See beyond. His pen hovered over the page, but didn't move. Professor Zhang walked between rows, voice lowering. "Most people think empathy is kindness. It isn't. It's precision." A ripple moved through the room. Confusion, intrigue, mild defensiveness. Zeyuan watched it shift in color. Yellow sharpened, gray thinned, red flared, then retreated, Precision. The word settled somewhere inside him. After class, chairs scraped loudly as students rushed out, relieved to escape introspection before lunchtime. Zeyuan remained seated, still. Professor Zhang gathered his notes, aware of the lingering presence. Zeyuan approached the desk quietly. "Professor, do you think empathy can be trained, or are some people simply born with more of it?" Professor Zhang didn't answer immediately. He studied him, not as a student, but as a case. "Some are born with sharper instruments," he said at last, "but an untrained instrument only makes noise." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary. "Why do you ask?" Behind his composed expression, a faint golden curiosity flickered. Zeyuan noticed. "Of course he did. Just wondering," he replied. Professor Zhang gave a small, almost amused nod. "Curiosity will either make you exceptional or dangerous." The hallway outside burst with noise as the next class approached. Colors swelled beyond the doorway. Zeyuan stepped back. He did not look overwhelmed. He did not look strained. But his jaw tightened for a fraction of a second before smoothing again. He left the classroom, and the colors followed. The library glowed with quiet precision. Evening light slid through floor-to-ceiling glass, stretching long reflections across polished concrete and brushed steel. LED strips traced the edges of minimalist shelves, illuminating rows of psychology and neuroscience volumes like curated artifacts. The air hummed softly with climate control, distant typing, and the restrained rustle of pages turning. It felt engineered for focus. Zeyuan sat alone at a long table near the window. Books surrounded him in careful disorder: neuroscience of emotion, abnormal psychology, and the human mirror. Margins lined with ink, notes structured and deliberate. He read about affective resonance, about microexpressions, about the measurable language of emotion. Each sentence he traced slowly, as if it might finally translate what had never needed translation for him. A chair scraped somewhere behind him. Footsteps passed. A student moved quickly between shelves, flipping through flashcards under their breath. A faint orange static trailed behind them, thin, restless, crackling with exam anxiety. Zeyuan's pen paused. The static brushed against the edge of his awareness, tightening his jaw. He lowered his eyes to the page, forcing his focus onto printed words instead of the glow. Synapses, hormones, behavioral triggers, things that could be diagrammed, measured, and named. The lecture hall felt different in the evening. Earlier, it had been alive with caffeine and overlapping conversations. Now, the lights were dimmed slightly, and the air had settled into something heavier. Listening, rows of students sat straighter than usual, notebooks open, screens are glowing faintly. At the back of the room, Professor Zhang stood with his arms folded, watching. Case presentations had begun. One student fumbled through diagnostic criteria, voice wavering. Another relied too heavily on slides. Then, Zeyuan's name appeared on the screen. He walked to the front without hurry. No nervous shuffle, no exaggerated confidence, just stillness. He spoke clearly, measured, not dramatic, not rushed. He didn't read from the slides. He didn't need to. As he analyzed the case, his words moved with precision, tracing behavioral inconsistencies, subtle shifts in tone, and the spaces between what the patient said and what they avoided. He described emotional leakage, micropauses, avoidant posture, patterns others had skimmed over. Around the room, colors shifted. Yellow sharpened into alert focus. Muted gray lifted. Even the restless red near the aisle dimmed into concentration. Professor Zhang's expression softened slightly. Faculty members near the wall exchanged a glance, small, contained. Zeyuan didn't notice, or perhaps he did, and chose not to. He concluded without flourish. Just facts, just clarity. Silence followed for a beat longer than necessary. Then, quiet applause. As he returned to his seat, whispers threaded through the rows. The prodigy, Zhang's favorite, the one who sees through people. The words drifted toward him. He kept his eyes forward. If he heard them, he didn't react. But for a fraction of a second, a faint silver-blue shimmer surfaced near his shoulder. Not pride, not exactly, something quieter. Then it faded, absorbed back into stillness. The quad shimmered beneath a canopy of lantern light. Paper globes swayed gently from the trees, casting warm halos across stern paths and trimmed lawns. The air was cool, scented faintly with osmanthus and damp earth. Beyond the archways, glass and concrete buildings stood softened by ivy and shadow. Laughter drifted somewhere in the distance. Zeyuan walked alone. Windows glowed across the campus. Faint blue, faint green, occasional restless amber. Each one is a fragment of thought, fatigue, ambition. To him, it was almost beautiful. Almost. He sat beneath a tree at the edge of the lawn, drawing his knees slightly closer, watching the colors breathe in and out of the buildings, like a living mural. For once, they weren't overwhelming, just distant. Zeyuan said softly, "Maybe I was born to listen, even when no one's speaking." A faint gold ripple stirred in the air around him. Not loud, not triumphant, just quiet recognition. For the first time, the weight felt like direction. The corridor stretched long and sterile, washed in pale morning light. Fluorescent panels buzzed faintly overhead. The walls, unadorned and white, swallowed sound until footsteps felt intrusive. A nurse passed with measured speed, clipboard pressed to her chest like armor. The faint smell of antiseptic lingered. Outside the frosted windows, the city was waking. Inside the psychiatric wing, time moved differently, slower, heavier. Dr. Lin Zeyuan, 27, walked down the corridor, ID badge catching the light with each step. His expression was composed, professional, but beneath it, he was listening. Gray pooled near one closed door, tight anxiety. A thread of indigo seeped from another. Grief that had settled too long. Pale green flickered faintly somewhere farther down. Fragile hope. He steadied his breathing before stopping at Psychiatry Consultation Room, 03. He knocked once. Rain tapped softly against the hospital windows. The corridor outside smelled faintly of antiseptic and wet pavement. Nurses moved past with quiet urgency. Their footsteps were dull against the polished floor. Zeyuan pushed open the door to Consultation Room 03. He expected to see Chen Ming sitting where he always did, shoulders curved forward, hands clasped together, eyes searching for something to hold on to. But the chair was empty, still, too still. He frowned slightly, setting the patient file down on the desk. Before he could sit, the door opened again. A nurse stepped in. Her face looked wrong. Pale, tense, as if she had been carrying something heavy for too long. She hesitated before speaking, fingers tightening around the clipboard. "Dr. Lin, I'm sorry." Zeyuan's eyes lifted slowly, his brow tightening. He didn't speak. "The patient from your consultation, Chen Ming." She swallowed, voice catching. "He jumped from his apartment this morning." For a moment, the world stopped. No sound. No color, only white silence filled the room. Then it came back all at once, red, sharp and violent, black, swallowing the air, violet, twisting through his chest like something breaking. The colors weren't coming from anyone else. They were his. Guilt, shock, something deeper that felt like failure. His breath caught in his throat. The room tilted slightly, as if the floor had shifted beneath him. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, too loud, too fast, sinking with nothing but the chaos inside him. He gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles whitening. "I felt it." His voice was rough, barely a whisper. The memory flashed, the faint gold pulse behind Chen Ming's chest. Fragile, alive, and he had believed it meant hope. His fingers tightened further. "I could have stopped it," he said hoarsely, more to himself than to the nurse. She lowered her gaze, silent, the clipboard pressed tightly against her chest. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the windows. Inside the room, the colors raged around him. Grief, disbelief, and a quiet, merciless question he could not escape. If he could see pain so clearly, why hadn't he seen this? The restroom was dim, lit only by the weak flicker of a dying fluorescent bulb overhead. One corner buzzed faintly, spilling uneven light across the tiled floor and the edge of a worn leather couch. The air smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, layered with the heavy stillness of a room meant for rest, but rarely used that way. A lab coat hung crookedly on a hook near the door, its sleeves twisted. Forgotten. Zeyuan sat alone in the darkness. His uniform was wrinkled now, the sharp lines gone. His hands trembled where they rested against his knees. The air around him felt dense, heavy. Gray shadows stirred slowly, rising from within him like quiet storms. He pressed his palms over his ears, as if he could shut the world out. But the color slipped through his fingers anyway. They were his. His breath fractured into uneven pulls. Not loud sobs, just sharp, strangled breaths that refused to steady. Each inhale scraped through his chest like blasts. He whispered into the silence. Zeyuan, what use is empathy if I can't save the one who needs it most? His head lowered slowly until his forehead rested against the cold metal table. The chill seeped through his skin. Tears fell quietly, disappearing into the shadow beneath him. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, through the blur of exhaustion and grief, something flickered. A faint gold shimmer. Not coming from anyone else, from him. Small and fragile, but stubbornly alive. Zeyuan lifted his head, eyes swollen and red. His voice was barely more than breath. Zeyuan, if feeling too much is my curse, then I'll use it, even if it destroys me. The weak fluorescent bulb flickered again above him, and the gold light, thin as a thread, refused to go out. Author's note. Thank you for reading. I would love to hear your thoughts or theories about Zeyuan's ability.